Well, so we'll move on to the next talk, which is by Farah Ishtiaq on birds and parasite diversity in the Western Himalayas.
Good morning, everyone. First, I would like to thank all the organizers for having us all together for this symposium. We really needed a symposium on bird monitoring in India. And thank you for inviting me for giving and sharing my work today. So I've been doing mist netting in Uttarakhand for the last 10 years and mainly trying to understand how the migration ecology influenced the birds' infection status, mainly from malarial parasites. Well, the idea here is that the birds which really migrate far off to, say, different far off places, they get infected with more parasite, they accumulate. And as opposed to the ones which are short distance migrant, they probably are not exposed to so many parasites. And we also want to understand how that relates to the bird abundance, diversity in a habitat they share with other species. So for that, you need really meticulously collected bird abundance data. Either you can use point count or mist netting, and I chose to do it by mist netting. And how the bird condition, body condition relates to the infection and all kinds of trends which might be going on in the population, because birds in these habitats are going through a lot of selection pressure. So trying to keep this question in mind, we designed this study in Uttarakhand and we carefully selected few sites. So for example, here you have Dehradun at 600 meters, which are the lowest elevation sites. And there are these cluster of 4 sites, which do look quite close together, but actually the range goes all the way from 1800 meters to 3100 meters. So the idea here was you go there every year in the breeding time, because that's when all the elevational migrant as well as the resident birds are there on the breeding territories. And also it's a very good time to look for parasites in the birds because their immune system is quite suppressed. So what we are trying to find out is using this standardized mist study protocol. So you go there every year and you have these mist nets set up at the same time of the year. And what we are lacking, the only thing we're lacking here is that maybe we can't compare the sites because the number of mist nets are not the same per each site, but we can compare it across the year for the same sites. So we collected very huge minute details like morphometering in terms of their body weight, mold, fat scores, and trying to relate it with the infection status and body condition in the breeding season. And again, just the question was basically, do we see a change in the parasite diversity with the elevation, and also how that relates to the host abundance? So I will not be talking about the host abundance data because I'm yet to analyze, but I'll give you some brief snippets of what we have found in terms of the trends in the mist netting pattern. So for example, you're looking at here is 600 meter, the captures we had for 41 species. This is inside the WIA campus. Now, WIA campus, I mean, whoever have been there, you must know it's a very small campus. And we had quite a few reed traps in the last 3 years. And the longest one I had was for 6 years of after the black-cheeked babbler, which for a small passerine is quite a long time, I thought. And rusty-cheeked babblers, like after 5 years. And this kind of pattern is still into other sites as well. So for example, in Pandar Valley, you can see the diversity again is increasing. You have 62 species, and so is the re-trap rate is 5.3%. And again, in Nanasuya, it again increases, which is the mid elevation, I would say, effect is going on here. And again, you have the high number of species. And then it sort of trails off in the highest point, which is the 3100 meter. Now, some of the other things which we have tried to analyze using this information is the infection status, how that relates to the body condition. So what you're looking at here is, for example, in finches, the birds which are infected, they show very poor body condition as opposed to the uninfected birds. Now, if we are just monitoring the birds in terms of the, their survival rate, these kind of information, I think gives a lot of weight to your data, because these are the facts which are sort of hiding in plain sight, and I think needs to be considered in our future modeling. And again, to give you an example for this red-headed tit, for example, here the birds which are have a very high stress level, which have a very bad body condition, and the one which are in good condition have a very low stress level. So here the stress level is in terms of heterophils and leukocytes, which are the white blood cells, and a ratio higher the ratio of that in an animal, that it shows proportion. It shows the birds are very stressed out. So these are the things I think which have a huge potential in trying to do some kind of predictive modeling and understand how that might be changing the survival trends and also the abundance of these different hosts in a habitat. Now, to give you another example, this is something which I collaborated with Dr. Ramesh Srinivasan, which I think he's going to talk in the next session, is to look into how the host abundance, which he's been recording based on mist netting, relates to the parasite diversity. And just to show you here quickly that as we managed in the logged and unlogged plot, so bird diversity actually has sort of reached an asymptote, but we have a huge parasite diversity in these habitat. But the interesting thing for me was that as the host abundance is increasing, the parasite diversity is also increasing, and certainly in the logged habitat. And this trends again show the primary habitat birds, forests have very huge specific or host specific lineages of parasites. So again, if we are trying to include some of these parameters in our model, I think disease becomes a very important component which needs to be considered, and which can show you volume, how the climate change is going to change the range expansion of different species and in different habitat. So just to conclude this, I would say that bird ringing is a very powerful tool and in understanding the population trends as well as disease dynamics. Standardized bird ringing does help you to understand the patterns across the sites and both spatially and temporally. And biometrics, I cannot emphasize, just putting a ring is not enough. You need to record those data on their mold, fat scores, and ring length, which gives you a lot of more information because these information are literally missing from a lot of species in India. And it's a very good method of detecting shy and skulking species, which can probably, we don't see them so often in our point counts. So with this, I would like to thank my funding agency, India Alliance. They have been funded this work for the last 7 years. Uttarakhand Forest Department, you know how difficult it is to get permission for mist netting and blood sampling. They've been really good in giving me this permission. Wildlife Institute in India has been so helpful in facilitating this work. And I had a very good collaborator, Sahas, who's been doing a lot of wintering ringing in this habitat, which was really good in comparing the trends, which I haven't shared here today. And as I just said, mist netting is something you can't do alone. You need a good team and good group of people to support you and to help you in the field. And I have that really good support. So with this, I'll end this talk and I'll be happy to take questions.
The first one is from Ghazala, and she said, I'm interested to know how many nets were used at each site.
Yeah, so I had something like 15 to 20 nets per site, Ghazala, and these are the nets of different sizes. So the idea is that when you use different size net, you must keep a record of that so we can sort of calculate the, the netting hours you have per site, and that makes a meaningful comparison for the abundance data later on. Yeah.
The next question is from Pallavi, and she said, I just wonder, does ringing birds have any negative effect on them?
No, the short answer is no, Pallavi, but I would say that ringing needs to be done by people who are trained and who knows how to set up the nets. And I mean, it's a process, it's a method which needs to be learned. I mean, there is many technicalities to the process. And if you have practiced how to handle the birds, where to set up the nets, there's no way you will cause harm to any of these species. So the idea is that you must make sure when you go out and do ringing, you are a very good ringer and you know how to handle the birds. Rohan knows that very well.
Yeah. And also netting responsibly, not leaving the nets open in the rain, things like that.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
A lot of ethics involved. So we're out of time. So Farah, if you could please respond to the other questions on Slack later on.
Sure. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.